A stranger helped with her wedding gown, the Mafia boss whispered. Your groom is gone, I'm not. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of the bridal suite, painting the room in gold. Soft silk and lace hung from every corner, delicate and gleaming. The walls, lined with mirrors, reflected 1,000 shimmering lights, making the room feel almost unreal, like a place out of a dream. Yet beneath the beauty, a quiet unease lingered. Alara stood in front of her mirror, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed the folds of her wedding gown. The fabric was soft, white as winter snow, and embroidered with tiny silver threads that caught the sunlight. She had imagined this moment countless times, the happiness, the laughter, the joy. But now, standing alone in the vast room, her heart pounded with a different feeling, worry. Her groom, a man of wealth and high standing, was nowhere to be seen. Hours had passed since the wedding ceremony was supposed to begin, and there was still no sign of him. The servants whispered in corners, exchanging nervous glances. Rumors of betrayal, or worse, began to ripple through the household. Alara tried to steady her breathing, but each passing minute made her chest tighten. She had always been calm under pressure, but this was different. Today, everything she had planned for, dreamed of even, was slipping through her fingers. She felt as if the golden sunlight had turned into shadows, creeping across the room with quiet menace. The door to the suite opened quietly, and she spun around. A man stood there, tall and confident, his presence filling the room in a way that made her step back instinctively. He wore a dark suit, simple yet elegant, and his eyes held a calm that contrasted sharply with the chaos in her heart. "I can help," he said, his voice low and steady. "With your gown." Alara frowned, unsure how to respond. Who are you?" The man smiled faintly, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "You may call me Dominic. I am someone who understands the dangers you face today." Alara studied him carefully. There was something in the way he moved, something commanding yet quiet, that made her uneasy and curious at the same time. She didn't know if she could trust him, but in that moment she had no choice. Reluctantly, she allowed him closer. Dominic's hands were careful as he adjusted the delicate folds of her gown. He moved with precision, like a master of his craft, but every touch seemed to carry a strange warmth. Alara felt a shiver run down her spine, not from cold, but from the intensity of his presence. "Your groom is gone," Dominic whispered suddenly, his breath brushing against her ear. "I am not." Alara froze. Her heart skipped a beat and she stepped back instinctively, searching his eyes for any hint of threat. But Dominic's gaze was calm, unwavering. It was not the voice of a man who wished to harm her. It was a promise, a warning, and a challenge all at once. "Why are you here?" she asked softly. Her voice trembled despite her effort to remain composed. "To help," he said simply. "You are not safe. And neither is your wedding." The words sent a chill down her spine. The room, once bright and inviting, now felt like a cage. Outside, she could hear the murmur of anxious servants and the distant sound of horse hooves on cobblestone. Danger was near, closer than she had realized. Alara took a deep breath, trying to gather her courage. She had always believed she could face anything, but today, everything she knew seemed fragile. Her world was shifting, and Dominic's sudden appearance had turned the expected joy of her wedding into something she could barely recognize. Dominic straightened, his dark eyes scanning the room with alertness. "We must leave," he said. "Now, leave." "But my wedding," Alara began, but the words faltered in her throat. Dominic shook his head. "Your groom is missing. The ceremony is meaningless if danger waits outside these walls. You must trust me. Trust." The word hung in the air, heavy and unfamiliar. Alara wanted to resist, to cling to the life she had imagined for herself. But looking into Dominic's eyes, she saw something undeniable, a promise of protection, a strength that could shield her from the unseen threats surrounding her. With a hesitant nod, she allowed him to guide her out of the suite. Each step they took was measured, quiet, as if the very walls of the house could hear them and betray their presence. The corridors were long and shadowed, filled with portraits of ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow them. Every flicker of candlelight created shapes that danced across the walls, like ghostly spectators to the unfolding drama. Alara felt a strange mix of fear and fascination. Dominic moved with confidence, his presence reassuring even as it unsettled her. She had never met anyone like him. His world, she realized, was one of secrets, power, and danger, yet he had chosen, inexplicably, to step into hers. They reached the outer courtyard, where the sun now hung high in the sky, and a horse-drawn carriage waited. Dominic opened the door for her with a careful hand, bowing slightly as if acknowledging her importance. She could feel the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders, but for the first time since the morning began, a glimmer of hope appeared. As they rode through the quiet streets of the city, Alara's mind raced. Where was her groom? Why had he disappeared? And who, truly, was this Dominic who seemed to know so much about the dangers she faced? Dominic remained silent for most of the journey, his eyes scanning the city streets with calculated attention. Every now and then he would adjust the reins, his movements precise and controlled, as if he were aware of every shadow, every whisper of movement in the city. Alara watched him, her curiosity growing. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally, unable to contain her question any longer. Dominic's gaze met hers briefly. "Because someone must," he replied simply, "and because I do not allow harm to come to those who cannot defend themselves." The words stirred something in her, an unexpected warmth, a sense of safety she had not felt in hours. And yet, the tension remained. She could sense that this was only the beginning of something far larger than herself, a storm that had been quietly gathering around her life. As they approached the edge of the city, the streets grew narrower, darker. The buildings leaned close together, casting long shadows over the cobblestones. Dominic slowed the carriage, his eyes alert. "We are close," he said, "but the danger is not over." Alara's pulse quickened. She had hoped that once she left the house, she would be safe. But now, with every passing moment, she realized that the world she thought she knew was filled with hidden threats. And Dominic, he was her only guide, her only shield against the unknown. The carriage came to a stop in a secluded alley. Dominic helped her down carefully, his hand steadying her with surprising gentleness. "We must go on foot from here," he said. "It is too dangerous to remain in open streets." Alara nodded, though fear gnawed at her heart. She followed him into the shadows, her gown trailing behind her like a river of moonlight. The air was cool and quiet, but every sound, every distant footstep, every rustle of wind, felt amplified as if the city itself were holding its breath. After a few minutes of cautious walking, they reached a small, hidden courtyard behind an abandoned building. Dominic pushed open a heavy wooden door, revealing a safe space lit by soft candlelight. The room smelled faintly of herbs and old wood, comforting in a way that made Alara relax slightly. "You will be safe here," Dominic said, closing the door behind them. "For now." Alara looked around, absorbing the warmth and quiet of the room. She had never imagined a place like this existed in the heart of the city, hidden, protective, secret. And yet, even in safety, her mind could not rest. Questions tumbled through her thoughts like restless birds. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again, her voice barely above a whisper. Dominic's eyes softened, though they remained serious. "Because I choose to," he said, "and because the world has not been kind to you. Today you stand at the edge of a storm, and I will help you navigate it." Alara felt a strange flutter in her chest. The danger, the uncertainty, the forbidden trust she was placing in this stranger, it was overwhelming. And yet she could not deny the sense of safety that settled over her, fragile but real. As the sun began to set outside, painting the sky with streaks of crimson and gold, Alara realized something profound. Her wedding day, the day she had imagined so many times, had changed forever. She no longer knew what the future held, nor whom she could trust. But for the first time she felt the stirrings of something new, something dangerous, beautiful, and utterly impossible to ignore. Dominic stood near the doorway, his silhouette framed by the fading light. He looked at her not as a stranger but as someone who had chosen to protect her against the world's cruelty. "Your groom is gone," he whispered again, his voice steady, low, and certain. "I am not, and I will not let you face this alone." Ilara's heart raced. She wanted to speak, to ask 100 questions, to demand answers. But she only nodded, realizing that words could not capture the gravity of this moment. In that quiet, candle-lit room, a bond had begun, a bond of trust, danger, and the unspoken pull of something more. And outside, beyond the walls of their fragile sanctuary, the city continued to hum with life and hidden threats. The wedding she had planned, the life she had imagined, had vanished like morning mist. But with Dominic by her side, she felt the first flicker of hope, a promise that she would survive the storm, whatever it might bring. And deep in the shadows, unseen eyes watched them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Cliffhanger. And somehow, she knew that the path ahead would test everything she thought she understood about love, trust, and danger. The city was quiet now, but not peaceful. The streets, usually filled with merchants and travelers, were empty. Shadows stretched long under the dim glow of the street lamps, twisting over cobblestones like dark fingers. Ilara felt a chill despite the warm night air. She clutched her gown close, her mind racing with questions she could not answer. Dominic led her through narrow alleyways, moving silently and confidently. Every step seemed deliberate, precise. It was as if he knew the city better than anyone, as if he had walked these hidden paths countless times. Ilara tried to match his pace, but her gown slowed her down, brushing against the stone walls and catching on loose stones. "Why are we going this way?" she asked softly, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Dominic did not look back. "The main streets are too exposed," he replied. "There are people who would watch, who would take advantage of this night. You must understand, danger follows you even now." Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She had imagined this day as one of happiness and celebration, not fear and uncertainty. She had thought the wedding would be the beginning of a new life, a life filled with love and laughter. But now, every step through the dark city reminded her how fragile life could be. As they turned a corner, a black-coated figure appeared at the end of the alley. Ilara froze, her breath catching in her throat. Dominic stepped in front of her, his hand resting lightly on the small dagger at his belt. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. The figure paused, watching them. Then, without a word, it disappeared into the shadows. Ilara felt a shiver run down her spine. Whoever that was, they had not been friendly. And she realized with a sinking feeling that her troubles were far from over. They continued in silence until they reached a hidden courtyard behind a row of abandoned buildings. Dominic pushed open a heavy wooden door, revealing a small room lit by soft candlelight. The space smelled faintly of herbs and old wood, comforting but strange at the same time. "You can rest here," Dominic said. "For a while at least, but we cannot stay long. Others will be looking for you." Ilara sank into a wooden chair, her hands trembling. "Why me?" she asked again, the question spilling from her lips before she could stop it. "Why are you helping me?" Dominic looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Because someone must, and because I do not allow harm to come to those who cannot defend themselves. You are not prepared for what lies ahead." Ilara swallowed hard. She had always believed that she could handle any challenge, that she could face any danger with courage and grace. But now, sitting in this dimly lit room, she realized how little she truly understood about the world she had been born into. The room was small, with stone walls and a single window high above. The candles flickered, casting dancing shadows across the floor. Ilara's thoughts were chaotic, but one thing was certain: Dominic was unlike anyone she had ever met. He was calm in the face of danger, commanding without demanding, and yet there was a strange warmth to him that made her heart race. "You must rest," he said gently. "Tomorrow we begin to uncover what has happened to your groom. Tonight you need strength." Alara nodded, though sleep seemed impossible. Her mind raced with images of her missing groom, of the black-coated figure in the alley, and of Dominic, whose presence was both comforting and terrifying. She realized that her life had changed in ways she could not yet understand. Hours passed, and the city outside grew quieter still. The only sounds were the occasional creak of the old building and the soft rustle of Dominic moving about the room. Alara watched him from her chair. He seemed almost untouchable, a man shaped by shadows and secrets, and yet he had chosen to step into her life. Finally, he approached her carrying a small cup of tea. "Drink this," he said. "It will help you rest." Alara took the cup, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent a strange warmth through her, a feeling she had never experienced before. She sipped the tea, tasting the faint herbs and sweetness, and felt a small measure of calm settle over her. "You trust me," Dominic said quietly, almost to himself. "Do not question that feeling. It is rare and it is valuable." Alara looked up at him, unsure what to say. She wanted to ask him everything, who he really was, why he cared, what dangers lay ahead, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she nodded, silently acknowledging the bond that was beginning to form between them. As the night deepened, Dominic stood near the door, keeping watch. Alara finally closed her eyes, exhaustion claiming her despite the fear in her heart. She dreamed of the wedding that never happened, of a life that could have been, and of the man who had appeared in her life like a shadow in the sunlight. When she woke, the room was quiet, but the feeling of unease remained. Dominic was gone from the room, though she knew he had not left the building. Her heart raced as she listened for any sound, but only the faint tick of an old clock marked the passing of time. Dominic returned moments later, carrying a folded map. He laid it on the table before her, his fingers tracing the streets and hidden paths with precision. "We must move quickly," he said. "The city is not safe. There are those who would use your groom's disappearance for their own gain." Alara leaned over the map, studying the streets and alleys. She could see now that the city she had thought she knew was full of secrets, full of hidden paths and hidden dangers. And she realized that she would need to rely on Dominic, not only for protection but for guidance. "Why me?" she asked again, her voice small but firm. "Why am I the one they want?" Dominic's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "Because you are important, more than you realize, and because there are those who fear what you represent, even if you do not yet know it yourself." Alara felt a shiver run down her spine. She had always believed that her life was ordinary, that she was safe in the world she had known. But now she understood that she had been living in a fragile illusion. Her life was intertwined with forces she could barely comprehend, and the path ahead would test everything she had ever believed. Dominic rolled up the map and placed it in his coat. "We leave at once," he said. "There is no time to lose. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes." They moved through the city once more, this time with greater caution. Dominic's knowledge of hidden paths and secret passages guided them safely through the dark streets. Alara followed closely, her heart pounding with each step. Every shadow seemed alive, every distant sound a warning. As they reached the edge of the city, Dominic paused. "We are close," he said, "but the danger is not over. You must remain alert." Alara nodded, her mind racing with fear and anticipation. She had survived the morning, the disappearance of her groom, and the appearance of Dominic. But she knew that the real challenges were only beginning. Dominic led her to a small, hidden door in the side of a building. He pushed it open, revealing a stairway leading down into darkness. "This will take us to safety," he said, "but we must move quickly and quietly. There are eyes everywhere." Alara followed him down the steps, her gown brushing against the stone walls. The air grew cooler, and the faint scent of earth and stone filled her nose. She realized that she was leaving the world she had known behind, stepping into a place of shadows, secrets, and danger. At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a narrow corridor lined with doors. Dominic led her to one of them and opened it, revealing a small room with a single bed and a fireplace. The room was simple, but it felt safe in a way the outside world did not. "You can rest here," Dominic said, "for a while, but we must be ready to move at any moment. The city is not safe, and your groom's disappearance is only the beginning." Alara sank into the bed, exhaustion and relief washing over her. She had survived the first night, guided by a man she barely knew but already trusted. And yet she knew that the path ahead would be filled with danger, secrets, and choices that could change her life forever. Dominic stood near the door, his eyes scanning the corridor. He did not speak, but his presence was a constant reassurance. Alara realized that she was not alone. For the first time since the morning began, she felt a small spark of hope. As the candlelight flickered, shadows danced on the walls, reminding her that the world outside was still dangerous, still full of secrets. But she was not afraid, not completely. She had Dominic by her side, and for now, that was enough. And somewhere beyond the walls of their fragile sanctuary, the city waited, holding its breath for what would come next. Cliffhanger. Dominic had protected her tonight, but tomorrow would bring new challenges, and the secrets of her groom's disappearance would begin to unfold. The path ahead was uncertain, and danger lurked closer than she could imagine. The night had been quiet, but the city outside was restless. Alara sat by the small window in the hidden room, staring at the faint glow of the moon over the rooftops. She could hear the distant echo of footsteps, the whisper of the wind through narrow alleys, and the quiet hum of the city that never truly slept. Her heart was heavy with worry, not just for her missing groom, but for the man who had become her protector, Dominic. He had been silent for most of the night, watching over her with calm, steady eyes. Yet, in those quiet moments, she had begun to sense the weight he carried, the responsibilities, the dangers, and the secrets that seemed to cling to him like shadows. She wondered what had led him to this life, what had hardened him, and yet why he had chosen to step into hers. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You need to understand, Alara," he said, standing near the fireplace. "The world you knew, it no longer exists. Your groom is missing for a reason. There are forces at play you cannot yet see, people who will use this chaos for their own gain." Alara swallowed hard. "But why me? Why would anyone want to hurt me? I've done nothing to them." Dominic's eyes softened, though his expression remained serious. "Because you are connected to more than you realize. Your family, your life, they carry weight, and some will stop at nothing to control it." Fear and confusion churned in her chest, but she nodded. She had always believed she could handle life, but now she felt fragile, like a bird caught in a storm. And yet, there was a part of her that was drawn to Dominic, to his calm strength, to the quiet promise that he would not let harm come to her. The first rays of dawn touched the room, casting soft light across the stone walls. Dominic moved to the table and poured 2 cups of tea. The warmth of the drink was comforting, a small comfort in a world that seemed suddenly dangerous. "Drink," he said, handing her a cup. "You will need strength. Today will not be easy." Alara took the cup with trembling hands, savoring the warmth. "What will we do?" she asked softly. "We find your groom," Dominic replied, "and we discover who is behind this, but we must move carefully. One wrong step, and everything could be lost." She nodded, her fear mingled with determination. She realized that she could no longer be a passive observer in her own life. She would have to be brave, even if it terrified her. They left the hidden room quietly, stepping into the narrow corridors beneath the city. Dominic led her through secret passages, over uneven stones and down twisting stairways. Alara's mind raced with questions, but she kept silent. Every step brought them closer to danger, and she knew that she must trust him completely. Finally, they emerged into a larger, open space, a courtyard surrounded by high walls. The air was cool and damp, and the faint scent of earth and stone filled her senses. Dominic paused, his eyes scanning the shadows. "We are close," he said, "but stay alert. Someone is watching." Alara felt her pulse quicken. She had trusted him so far, but the unknown still frightened her. And yet, as she looked at Dominic, standing tall and alert, she felt a strange sense of safety. He was a man shaped by danger, yet he chose to protect her. That thought brought a warmth to her heart she could not ignore. They moved forward cautiously, every step measured and careful. The city around them seemed alive with unseen eyes, and Alara realized that they were not alone. Figures lurked in the shadows, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Suddenly a noise came from above, a soft rustle like fabric brushing against stone. Dominic's hand shot out, grabbing hers and pulling her behind a pillar. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Quiet," he whispered, his eyes narrowing. "They are close." Alara could barely breathe as they waited, listening to the faint sounds of movement. Minutes passed, each one stretching endlessly. Then, as suddenly as it began, the noise stopped. Dominic released her hand slowly, his gaze still sharp. "We are safe for now," he said. They continued through the courtyard, eventually reaching a small, hidden door. Dominic opened it carefully, revealing a narrow passage leading underground. "This will take us closer to your groom," he explained. "But we must be cautious. There are those who would harm him and anyone with him." Alara followed him down the steps, her gown brushing against the stone walls. The air grew cooler, heavier, and the faint smell of earth and stone surrounded them. She realized that she was leaving her old life behind, stepping into a world of shadows, secrets, and danger. As they moved through the underground tunnels, Dominic spoke quietly. "I need you to trust me completely, Alara. You cannot hesitate, cannot doubt. Your safety depends on it." She nodded, her heart pounding. "I trust you," she said, the words feeling both natural and terrifying to speak. Dominic glanced at her, a small smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Good. Then we are ready." Hours passed as they navigated the labyrinth of tunnels beneath the city. Every turn, every shadow, seemed to hold danger. Yet, with Dominic by her side, Alara felt a strange sense of courage. She began to see him not only as her protector, but as a man shaped by loyalty and honor, someone who had faced countless dangers and survived. Finally, they reached a larger chamber, hidden beneath the city. Torches lined the walls, casting flickering light across the stone floor. And there, tied to a chair in the center, was her groom. Alara's heart leapt and sank at the same time. Relief and fear collided within her. He was unharmed, but the fear in his eyes mirrored her own. "Alara," he whispered, his voice trembling. She ran to him, but Dominic placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Careful," he said. "There are others here. We must act smart or we all could be in danger." Alara nodded reluctantly. Dominic's calm presence steadied her, even as her emotions threatened to overwhelm her. Together, they freed her groom quietly, Dominic's movements precise and controlled. The man looked at Dominic with a mixture of fear and resentment, but Dominic ignored him, focusing only on ensuring their safe escape. As they moved back through the tunnels, Alara walked between Dominic and her groom, a protective shield forming around them. She realized that Dominic's presence was more than just a safeguard. It was a strength she could lean on, a force that made her feel both safe and alive. Hours later, they emerged from the underground passages into a quiet garden. Moonlight spilled over the flowers and fountains, casting a serene glow over the scene. For a moment the world seemed calm, almost peaceful. Alara turned to Dominic, gratitude and something more in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. I don't know how I could have survived without you." Dominic's expression softened, though he remained serious. "You are stronger than you realize," he said, "but even the strongest need guidance sometimes. and I will always be here to protect you. Alara's heart raced. The danger was not over, she knew that. But in this moment, with the cool night air and the quiet garden, she felt a bond forming, a connection built on trust, courage, and the shared experience of surviving the storm together. Her groom looked at her with uncertainty, but Alara's thoughts were elsewhere. She realized that her heart had begun to change, drawn to the man who had risked everything to keep her safe. Dominic's calm strength, his unwavering loyalty, and the quiet warmth in his eyes had awakened feelings she could not ignore. Dominic watched her silently, sensing the shift in her emotions. He did not speak, but the faintest hint of a smile appeared on his lips. He had always been careful, always guarded, but now he understood that something had begun between them, something fragile, yet undeniable. The night deepened, and the first hints of dawn touched the horizon. The city, still dangerous and full of secrets, seemed a little less threatening with Dominic by her side. Alara knew that challenges lay ahead, that the mystery of her groom's disappearance was far from resolved, and that danger could strike at any moment. But for now, she allowed herself a brief moment of peace. She had survived the night, learned to trust in Dominic, and discovered a strength within herself she had not known existed. And as they prepared to leave the garden, Dominic spoke softly, his voice carrying both promise and warning. "This is only the beginning, Alara. The world is full of shadows, and there are those who will not forgive us for what we have done tonight. But together we will face whatever comes." Alara nodded, her heart filled with determination. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with danger and secrets, but she knew she would not face it alone. Dominic had become more than a protector. He had become a guide, a presence she could rely on, and perhaps, in time, something even more. Cliffhanger. The city's secrets were far from revealed, and danger lurked closer than they realized. Alara's trust in Dominic had grown, but the storm ahead was only beginning, and no one knew how dark it would become. The morning sun broke over the city, washing the streets in soft gold. But even in the light of day, danger lingered. Alara walked beside Dominic and her rescued groom, her gown brushing against the cobblestones. Every shadow seemed alive, every distant sound a reminder that the world outside was not safe. Yet, for the first time since her wedding day began, she felt a spark of hope. Dominic led them through a quiet district, his eyes constantly scanning the rooftops and alleyways. He had remained silent for much of the journey, but the calm determination in his gaze spoke louder than any words. Alara had come to trust him completely. He was no longer just a protector. He had become a presence she depended on, a strength she could lean on. "Where are we going?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "To a safe place," Dominic replied. "One where we can plan. We cannot return to the city center. Too many eyes are watching." Alara nodded. Her heart still ached for the life she had expected, the wedding, the joy, the future she had imagined. But she realized that life was no longer possible. The world had shifted, and she had been forced to step into something entirely new. As they moved through narrow streets, a group of figures appeared ahead, blocking their path. They were well-dressed, their eyes cold and calculating. Alara's heart thumped in her chest. Dominic stepped in front of her, his stance calm but commanding. "Step aside," he said, his voice low and firm. The figures exchanged glances, then one of them stepped forward. "We know who you are, Dominic," he said, "and we know why you are here. You cannot take her away." Dominic's eyes narrowed. "I'm not here to fight you," he said. "I am here to protect her. If you value your lives, you will not stop me." Alara felt a surge of fear and excitement. She had seen Dominic face danger before, but this felt different. The tension was almost electric, and she realized how much she depended on his strength. The leader of the group smirked. "You are brave to stand alone, but you cannot win against us all." Dominic's calm eyes met his. "I do not need to win. I need only to protect her." With that, he stepped forward and the group hesitated. Dominic's confidence was undeniable, and his presence commanded attention. Slowly, the figures stepped aside, letting them pass. Alara exhaled, relief and admiration mixing in her chest. They continued their journey until they reached a hidden estate on the outskirts of the city. The walls were tall, surrounded by dense trees, and the gates were guarded with precision. Dominic led them inside, where servants moved quietly, eyes alert for any sign of danger. "This is safe," Dominic said, gesturing to the rooms prepared for them. "You can rest here, but stay vigilant. There are still threats we cannot see." Alara sank into a chair, her hands trembling slightly. She had survived the dangers of the night, the rescue of her groom, and the silent pursuit of unseen enemies. And yet she realized that her feelings for Dominic had grown stronger with each passing hour. She had come to rely on his strength, his calm presence, and his unwavering loyalty. Her groom looked at her uncertainly, but she felt a quiet resolve forming inside her. She realized that her heart had begun to change, drawn not to the man who had vanished on her wedding day, but to the one who had risked everything to protect her. Dominic stood near the doorway, watching her with a steady gaze. "You are stronger than you realize," he said quietly, "but even the strongest need guidance, and I will always be here to guide you." Alara looked up at him, her heart racing. She wanted to speak, to tell him everything she felt, but the words seemed impossible. Instead, she nodded, silently acknowledging the bond that had grown between them. Days passed, and the city slowly returned to its quiet rhythm. Alara spent her time in the estate, learning about the hidden world Dominic moved in. She discovered the power struggles, the alliances, and the dangers that shaped the lives of those in the shadows. And with each lesson, her respect and admiration for Dominic grew. He was a man of strength and honor, feared by many, yet loyal to those he chose to protect. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, Dominic approached her in the garden. The air was warm, scented with flowers, and the distant city seemed peaceful. Yet there was a tension between them, a quiet electricity that neither could ignore. "Alara," he said softly, "the time has come to make a choice." She looked at him, uncertainty in her eyes. "A choice?" "Yes," he replied. "Your groom has been rescued, but you must decide your future. You can return to the life you had planned, or you can embrace the world I can offer. A world of danger, yes, but also of trust, loyalty, and something more." Alara's heart ached. She had imagined a life of safety, of happiness with her groom. But the man she had come to rely on, the one who had protected her and stood by her in the storm, had awakened feelings she could not ignore. She took a deep breath, searching her heart. She realized that love was not always about what was expected or safe. Sometimes it was about courage, trust, and the willingness to face the unknown. I cannot return to the life I imagined," she said finally. "It no longer exists, but with you I feel safe. I feel alive." Dominic's eyes softened, a rare smile appearing on his face. "Then you choose wisely," he said. "I will not fail you. I will protect you always." They stood together in the garden, the weight of the world around them, yet a quiet peace settling between them. Alara realized that she had grown stronger, braver, and more aware of her own heart. And Dominic, for the first time in years, allowed himself to hope, for her, for them, for the future they could build together. But the world outside remained dangerous. Even as they embraced this moment of calm, hidden eyes watched from the shadows, waiting for the right time to strike. The city's power struggles were far from over, and their love, though strong, would be tested in ways they could not yet imagine. Alara felt Dominic's hand brush against hers, a gentle touch that sent warmth through her. "We face whatever comes," he said softly, "together." "Yes," she whispered, her heart full of trust and determination. "Together." The days that followed were filled with quiet moments of connection and understanding. Dominic taught Alara how to navigate the hidden world, how to recognize danger, and how to trust her instincts. She grew stronger with each lesson, her confidence blossoming alongside her growing affection for him. And Dominic, who had always been guarded, began to reveal more of himself. He shared his past, his regrets, and the reasons he had chosen this life. Alara listened, understanding that the man before her was shaped by experiences that had made him both strong and cautious, yet capable of great loyalty and love. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in deep reds and purples, they sat together in the garden, watching the city below. Alara leaned against Dominic, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. "I never imagined my life would change like this," she said softly. "Neither did I," Dominic replied. "But sometimes the unexpected path is the one worth taking." Alara smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had not known in days. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and she had emerged stronger. And she had found someone who would stand by her, not out of obligation but out of choice. As night fell, the city's lights twinkled like distant stars. The danger had not vanished, but in this moment, Alara felt hope. She had survived the storm, discovered her own strength, and found a connection that would guide her through whatever challenges lay ahead. Dominic took her hand, holding it gently. "You are ready," he said. "Ready to face the world, ready to face whatever comes. And I will be with you every step of the way." Alara looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity, strength, and promise reflected there. She knew that their journey was far from over, but she also knew that together they could face anything. And as they stood together, the moon rising over the city, a quiet sense of triumph filled her heart. She had chosen a path of courage and trust, of love and loyalty, and she had found a partner who would face the storms of life with her. Even in the shadows where danger waited, there was hope. And that hope was theirs, bound together by trust, bravery, and the quiet, enduring power of love.